Hi everyone, welcome to the first podcast style video that I'm going to be doing on this channel. And I'm going to plan on trying to do these at least once, at least a few times a month, but if not, maybe even every week. And that is where I'm just going to sit down and in a very casual environment and just answer questions that you all present to me. Those questions can be in comments from videos. It could be in response to a question or a poll that I post on the channel. It could be questions that you've sent to me via message or any of the other social platforms. I'm not going to necessarily organize them in any type of fashion. They could be questions related to candle making, questions related to running a candle business. It could be off the wall questions that might kind of flirt with both of those or might be even unrelated to those. So hopefully you guys enjoy this style of video. Like I said, it's going to be kind of laid back and casual. There's not going to be a lot of editing. This is going to be more of a just kind of podcast style video. So if you have any questions that I don't address in this video and you'd like me to address in the future, just let me know in the comment section of this video and I will definitely try to include those and start answering as many as I can in future videos. So this is the very first episode of this style, video of this style that we've done. So thanks for being the first ones here and let me know what you guys think about it. Okay, so I'm just going to go down a list of questions here that I've got on a recent post I did where I asked you some questions that you wanted me to answer. Maybe I haven't answered before, or maybe I haven't answered in enough detail, or maybe you just haven't seen some of the other videos, or I may have talked about some of these topics. And the first one is, how do I feel the candle market is right now, and what do I see changing in the next year? Well, I actually did a video not too long ago about candle trends and what we can learn about the candle industry and determining what we should be doing going forward as a candle maker or as running a candle business. That's a really good video because we actually look at some of the statistics and some of the trends that are actually going on in the industry to help us make some good decisions going forward. But how do I personally feel the candle market is right now? Well, I'm going to assume that they're asking in regards to how the candle selling market, not necessarily the candle maker market, and because we're making it for customers. So if that is what they meant by that, I think the candle market has changed in the sense that I think people are expecting to pay a little bit more now than they used to. And I think the reason for that is because of the surge of handcrafted and luxury type candles. Yes, you can still get very kind of cheap, economical candles in Walmart and Targets and your regular retail stores, right? You can get these 3-wick jars they're like 16-ounce jars, 3 wicks for like $3.99. It's kind of ridiculous. But I also think that the general public, for the most part, understands that you kind of get what you pay for. And that not necessarily that those other candles are not high quality, but that they're not locally or handcrafted made. And so it's just a different type of market. And because that side of the market has grown, in fact, that side of the market has grown in all industries where there's a lot more focus on handcrafted and kind of that personal touch, right? And so I think consumers are getting more used to that. And also consumers are getting more to wanting to support local, support the small business, support handcrafters. And so because of that, I think there's definitely been an uptick or a surge in supporting those type of candle makers like you and I. Even if it costs consumers a little bit more. Now, with that being said, you are still going to have a lot of customers say they can get your candles or they can get candles for the same quality or a lot cheaper, or I can run up to the retail store and I can get candles for half this price. You're never going to get away from that. You can't please all the people all the time. That was Abraham Lincoln, not me. But you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. And something like that. Anyways, long story short, I think the candle industry has definitely taken a step towards push for handcrafted. There's a lot of different types of materials and waxes that are being used, especially on the organic side, to try to appeal to that customer. The customers that are a little bit more, I don't want to say modern, but I guess more in touch with newer trends. And because of that, I think the best way to get that is from your local handcrafters and small businesses. So I think that favors candle makers. And it also favors the fact that we have to sell our candles for more. So I think most consumers are going to understand that, and they're not opposed to paying a little bit more. As far as where it's going to change in the next year, I forgot to touch on that, but I don't really see anything changing much in the next year, other than prices maybe continue to go up just because of the cost of materials and shipping has gone up. I don't necessarily see that changing significantly over the next year. Hopefully it does start to come down in the years ahead though. Next question was, which fragrances are the most important in my line? And how often do I change up fragrances? Well, the first part of that question is what fragrances are most important in my line? I'm not going to necessarily say that there's a single fragrance that's most important. I think what's most important is having complementary fragrances. So you want to have fragrances and options that appeal to different types of buyers and suit different moods and seasons. So you want some woodsy scents. You want some clean scents, maybe even some citrus scents. You want a few bakery scents. You need a couple floral scents, a couple masculine scents. So I think having the variety of that and having a good balance, a good variety, good mix is really what's key. More so than having a particular specific fragrance. Now, I can tell you my best sellers for quite a while now have been like Crackling Birch, my new Seaside Cove. I've got oak moss and amber type fragrance. Some of those, I've got a tobacco fragrance. Those tend to be kind of my best year-round sellers, but my best sellers change throughout the year. And so it's hard to say, which one is the most important in my line. I would say the most important thing about my line is having variety. And then how often do I change them up? Change them up, I'm not great at. Add to is more about what I do. I have a tendency to carry a significant amount of fragrances. Now, if you were to run and check to my website right now, you're going to notice not a whole lot, and really a lot are out of stock because I've had a crazy year in a big recent event, and so I haven't had a chance to kind of clean up and refill my stock, my inventory online. So don't use that as a barometer, but if you saw my shelves and saw my physical stock, you would realize I carry a lot of options. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a good thing or bad thing. It just kind of goes to show you that I don't necessarily change things out probably as much as I should. Instead, I add to it. So I need to get better about that in the future, and that is definitely something I plan on doing very soon. Next question was, do I know any benefits of coconut apricot wax or coconut apricot wax compared to using IGI 6006? If you're not familiar with 6006 wax, it is a parasoy wax. It's 70% paraffin and 30% soy. Very, very popular wax, both for beginners and advanced candle makers. And then coconut apricot or coconut apricot wax is definitely more of a niche wax. It's more of a luxury style wax. And it's definitely not near as common or near as popular as something like 6006 or other parasoy waxes for that matter. As far as benefits to using it versus something like IGI 6006, I would say the biggest benefit is that it's much easier to use. So it's a very soft, it's got a good melt point. It's very soft. It's not too challenging to wick. It works in various size containers. It's kind of it's just a one pour wax. So it's very, very easy to mix, blend, pour, and you're kind of done at that point. As opposed to 6006, depending on the type of jar you're using, you might find that you have to deal with sinkholes, kind of inconsistent jar adhesion sometimes, which is more an aesthetic thing, less of a performance thing. IGI 6006 can be kind of tricky to wick, especially in larger size jars. You have to move up to a double wick sooner than you normally would with other waxes because it does have a fairly high melt point of around 130 or so. So sinkholes, things, wicking, difficulties like that. I would say the biggest pro of a coconut apricot wax is that it's easier to use. I don't think it has better hot throw. It's it doesn't work better with more oils or anything like that. I would say it's purely about ease of use. So that would be the benefit in my opinion. I don't use much coconut apricot, so I can't speak beyond that. But as the benefit that sticks out to my head would be its ease of use. Next question. Hi Wade, I use 464 exclusively. 464 is a all 100% soy wax. I did buy some Eco Soy's CB135 to try, but I haven't used it yet because of the current wick situation. And that's regarding the sourcing issues that we're having. She's read that LX wicks are great to be used with CB135, but she'd love to hear my thoughts on this wax and appropriate wicks. Well, I don't use much CB135. I've used it a little bit in the past. I plan to do some more testing. You guys know that I like to test a lot of different materials and products here on the channel to help everyone out. But my testing that I did before, I had the best results with CD wicks and Eco wicks. I did not use any LX wicks. That's kind of the first I've heard that that's a good wick to use for that wax. LX wicks are usually used in paraffin waxes and some parasoys. CB135 is a soy wax. I have not used or seen LX wicks used in that wax before. That doesn't mean it's not right, just not something I have seen before. If it were me and I were to have a bag of 135, some jars, and I need to just start doing some random testing, I would almost certainly myself start with Eco or CD wicks, but that's just me. I apologize, I don't really have any other information to add in that regard because I haven't really used that wax a whole lot yet. Okay, let's see here. All right, so now this is another kind of business related question. It says, hi Wade, I'm having some difficulty with pricing. I sell to a small shop at Wholesale and then sell myself at some small vendor events and retail. One of my fragrance oils is twice the amount of my normal oils. Is it okay to charge more for the product that contains this oil? She has tried to substitute it, but it was a complete failure. That's a really, really good question. In fact, I just ran into a very similar situation myself where I wanted to use a couple new oils that I tested, but I was nervous that they were going to be way outside of my current kind of price range of oils that I usually buy. And I was worried on the impact it would have on my price because I didn't necessarily want candles of the same style and look and shape and everything at totally different prices. So great question. I sense that you're hesitant about doing that as well. And personally, I agree with you. I think it's confusing to customers to have 12 candles that are all the same size and shape and style and look, and everything's identical about them other than the scent, obviously. And then one of them is 50% more cost than the others. To the regular consumer, that's going to be odd because you don't see that anywhere else with the same candle. Now, different candles, sizes and shapes and everything, of course, are different prices. But having the same type line of candles and one or two of them being different price, I find that to be a little odd myself. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, and you may just have to say that this particular oil or combination of oils or the complexity of this one does cost more, and you can definitely do that and try it and see what happens. But I have a feeling it's not going to do that well when the rest of the candles are at a lower price point. My advice were to be that oil costs you more. Typically when that's the case, it's because it's a more complex oil and often it doesn't need to be used at such a high amount. So maybe you can try to use less of that oil and still get good results. And if you do, then you're closer to your normal price range. If not, you may consider using that oil in a different line of candles, maybe a luxury line or something like that, or continue to look for an alternative. I know that's not a great answer because you're right. Sometimes we find an oil and there's just no substitute. No matter what we try, we can't find one that's equally as good. But I completely hear you there. It's not something I would want to do. I wouldn't want to offer a candle that is just a completely different price. That being said, I have obviously almost all oils vary a little bit in price. So a lot of my candles have a different cost of goods or expense to make them. And so, I might have a dozen candles and the low end might cost me, let's say $2 to make, or the upper one might cost me up to $2.50 to make or something like that, right? In that case, I just price my candles knowing for a good price that covers all of them and knowing that some of them have a little bit higher profit margin than the other. And that's totally normal and totally okay. You can't really do that if it's an extreme difference in price though, right? Or an extreme difference in the cost for you to make it. So I would see on a individual candle basis how much more it would increase the cost of your candle, just because the 16-ounce bottle, let's say you're talking about 16-ounce bottles of fragrance, just because one bottle costs twice as much as the other, that doesn't mean your candle's going to cost twice as much as the other, because you're not using 100% fragrance oil in your candles, right? It's just a portion of your candle. So it will certainly increase the cost of your candle a little bit, but not 100%. So see how much it would increase the cost of one candle. And if that's still reasonable for you to sell at your current price point, then I think you're okay. Or if you need to bump all your candles up a little bit because you just can't live without a fragrance oil, that's another option too. But I do agree with you. Long story short, that I wouldn't want to use an oil that is going to just put the cost of my candles to an unreasonable amount. Next up, by the way, I'm not going to get to all of these. I don't want to make every one of these videos extremely long. I want to keep them to about 20 minutes or so, and then I'll just keep adding more and more questions, responding to more and more questions in future videos. Okay, how do you find wholesale accounts? It seems like every shop I approach already has a vendor. Also, do you provide them a sample pack, list sheet, etc.? Another good question. As far as finding wholesale accounts, To be perfectly honest, I haven't actually had to really go track down any of my own. They usually reached out to me, and there's a couple ways to help you do that. First of all, have a good online presence. If you've got a website and you're good about promoting it, you have Instagram, you have a Facebook account, eventually, it might take a while, but eventually some companies will find you and reach out to you if they like your product. So work on your branding, work on your labeling, a good clean website, look like you're ready to go. That will help them come to you first. As far as you being more proactive, if you do events and booths and craft shows and pop-ups, that's a really good place to do it. And if you do those, bring with you some wholesale kits. So basically little folders or packing presentation materials, basically a little packet that you can hand out to vendor booths, or if anyone stops and asks you for one, you have something to give them. It would have your information about your company, basically the type of material or products that you sell, maybe even some rough price ranges. That's up to you if you want to include it on that. How to contact you, what your minimum orders are, things like that. So yes, having a wholesale kit or a packet available is a great way not only to have something to give when someone asks you, but for you to be proactive yourself and hand them out whenever you have an opportunity. If you're going to go that route and have something ready to hand out at events, then you already have something also to hand out and just kind of walk door to door. Go to your local square or a local strip mall or wherever is close to you, wherever that would make sense, and just stop by and pop in person. If you're going to do that, I would bring a couple samples with you. So bring a little box, almost like a little gift set that's got a couple of maybe your best sellers, or maybe a couple different sizes, something like that. You know your products and business more than I would, obviously. And then you would give those samples along with your kit and or your packet. That's probably the best way to do it, to be honest. You're almost always going to start local, and then the other ones that are non-local will generally come to you. The longer you do this, the easier that becomes. I know it's a little challenging at first, and sometimes it feels like you're doing a lot of waiting at first. And a lot of people are just not comfortable being proactive at first, and I completely get that as well. If you are one of those people, then find someone to help you. Pay a friend. If you have an employee or someone that helps you on the side, pay them. Pay someone that's good with people, and that also can take the time to learn a little bit about your business. And you can pay them kind of a flat rate maybe, to spend some time just handing out and promoting your business and walking around. And then maybe you can even throw in like a 5% commission for them. So if they get you a wholesale account, you give them like 10% of their first wholesale order, and then 5% perpetually after that. So every time they reorder, they get another 5%. That's totally up to you. That's something you want to consider, but it's a good way for you to start having other people help you, especially if it's something you're not very comfortable with. So that would be my advice on how to pick up some wholesale. Let's see, I'm going to do one more on this first video because the first minute I did some extra talking. All right, so the last question for this particular video says, "Hi Wade, thank you for all you do. You are fab." Well, thank you. What do you think about sticking wicks with high temp RTV silicone gasket sealer? Would you like to try Nature Wax C3? Okay, two-part question there. Let me answer the second one first because it's a little quicker. As far as Nature Wax C3 wax, I have used it before. It's been so long that I don't really remember anything about it. I didn't like it enough to use it at the time, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot. I've got another sample of it to use, which I plan to start using here pretty soon. And when I get a chance to do it, I will definitely have a video on my results and my feedback and everything I normally do when I do a kind of a testing or review type video. The first part of your question though was about instead of using Wick stickers or like hot glue or whatever, you asked about using high temp RTV. So red RTV, black RTV, and there's even a clear silicone RTV as well. If no one's used that before, they are basically gasket sealers. So they're resistant to high temperatures, and they're almost like a putty or a glue, right? And then they come in tubes, and then you can stick your Wick stickers with that. A big proponent of this would be like Jeff Stanley from Stanley Handcrafted. He uses red RTV all the time. Well, I don't know how much I know he uses it. I don't know if he uses it exclusively, but he has definitely talked about it before. There are pros and cons to it, just like pretty much everything, right, with candle making. The pro is that it holds very, very well. It does hold better than like a glue stickers or glue dots. It holds better than the Wick stickers even, although any of them really work well if you use them properly. For the most part, there's always caveats. The RTV works really good. It's heat resistance. Your wicks are not going to move on you. So it's a great choice for that. And if you want to be sure your wicks are not going to be moved, they're a great option. The con for me is the cure time. So while they are technically kind of dry after a couple hours, it even really tells you on there, don't really fill or surround with liquid until after 24 hours, because it really needs to cure before it's considered cured. Now, granted, that's for sealing gaskets, not for, connecting or sticking wicks to a jar, but nonetheless, something like that doesn't always work well for me. If I have plenty of advance notice and I just want to sit around and wicking jars up and I don't really plan on using the jars anytime soon, then yeah, it's a great option. I've used them all. To me, I don't really notice a difference in any of them. They all work. But for generally speaking, I'm typically making candles all the time, it seems like, and I use different wicks just because of different fragrance oils or different waxes and different jars. So I don't always know what I'm going to need, and so I can't necessarily wick them all too far in advance. If I have the time, I will use it. If I don't, I just use good old wick stickers. Wick stickers, the key to those is making sure your jar is clean, and when you stick that wick down in your jar, you kind of roll it around, just make sure it's actually stuck. A lot of people just kind of put it in real quick and move on, and then they just don't stick that well. But that's a different conversation. To answer your question, what do I think about RTVs? I think it works great. It's just not always practical if you don't have a ton of time to wait for it to cure. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this video because we're over the 20-minute mark already. Thank you guys for tuning in to this first podcast style, answering your questions. Some of these require a lot more detailed, longer videos that are focused solely on individual questions. Anyone that's been around my channel a while, you guys know I like to get into detail on those type of questions, and we've got plenty of videos. If you haven't seen the other videos, definitely check out the channel, go to the videos. I've got over 100 videos there to go through. I've got a couple playlists here you can check out, but I am going to make this a thing, and so stick around for future ones. Ask your questions down in the comment section below, and I will be sure to address those in future videos. Thank you guys for being here. We talk a lot about making and selling candles on this channel, so love to have you around. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to check out my other social channels, and there's some great links in the description below as well. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.